Hi people, and hello my Chili and Garnish crew, it's Chili here from Live Listen Erased, and I'm bringing you a 5-minute review on the Manticore Tapes by Motorhead. Now I have always wanted to cover Motorhead on my channel. It is a lifelong goal as far as I am concerned, because I love Motorhead. They are perhaps my favourite band second to Metallica, and at the end of the day, I just haven't had the chance to cover them on 5-minute reviews because, well, I mostly cover the newer material as far as it's concerned. However, this I might make a small exception for, even though there is an asterisk concerning this album. You see, the Manticore Tapes is technically a re-recorded version of the debut album by Motorhead, which in itself had a re-recorded version of the debut album. It gets a little technical. You see, this goes back to when they, of course, released their first album back in 1977 with Fast Eddie Clarke on the lineup, and, of course, they made their impact and well and truly known. But this album was actually recorded with the previous lineup, and the tapes were just kind of lost per se. And this actually was released without the band's permission back in 1979 for the On Parole version of the CD, which features, of course, the original lineup, and it was not really something the band liked. So it did exist. It also charted a little bit for a while because of the success, of course, of Bomber and Overkill, but it was not something the band were really happy with. It's an interesting take, I guess, because it's a different version to, of course, the debut album, and that is how it is. But then we get to the Manticore Tapes, and the Manticore Tapes is yet again, another version of the debut album. This time, it's actually focused on a version of the tapes that were recorded over at Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and their studio, which is, of course, a Manticore studio located at Fulham. This one is interesting because I thought it was actually a live album. I'm listening to it going, oh nice, it's, like a small pub kind of venue. It's quiet though for some reason. I thought I heard crowds on the first take, I swear, but anyway, I guess on retrospective views I must have put them in my mind. But I thought this was a very live take. It sounds very raw and very of its time, I guess, as well. This is Motorhead early days at the end of the day. And I just kind of brushed it aside, figuring, this is also to do with all the live releases and outtakes that they had been pumping out over the last couple of years. No, it's not. Even if you visit the Wikipedia page, for some reason they list it as a studio album, the 24th studio album by Motorhead. That is incorrect. But whatever, Wikipedia, it's not exactly perfect. It's a good starting point, though. But the Manticore Tapes present an interesting aspect. The debut album by no means is a perfect record. It's an intriguing record, an insight into the band that is going to become legendary for, of course, becoming a god amongst, mortals like us. But as far as, the compositions go, meh. There is some interesting tracks, of course, to be noted on hand here, and I mean, Vibrator, for example, is certainly one of them. But, of course, the main ones that I always took note of, in particular, had to be The Watcher, which, of course, was Hawkwind Days era material, and the other one as well had to be, I think it was Iron Horse, Born to Lose. That was another track that I particularly enjoyed. Very bluesy, Motorhead is, of course, what it is, but that was more bluesy than I would be regularly in tune for. So I always figured Iron Horse Born to Lose was a very interesting version of a song that almost could have been Motorhead, and it's weird to kind of go back and listen to it. As far as what this album gives us, which is a different take on the original studio album, it's not bad. I always viewed the very first album, the original version anyway, as a flawed product. And I remember because I have the On Parole CD somewhere, and it describes it as such. It's it is a flawed product with flawed listing, well, not flawed tracks. It's a flawed product, but it shows an intriguing level of composition by the musicians on hand, high octane booze soaked material for what was to come. But as with most debut albums, it was just the beginning. Manticore Tapes isn't a bad album by any means at all, but if you love Motorhead, you're certainly going to go there and listen to it. I do recommend going back and tuning into this one because, hell, at the end of the day, the very first album is not something I kind of rush back to. I'm going to, of course, the Bronze Era shit. I am going back to Bomber. I am going back to Overkill. And I'm going back to, other ones as well, like 1916. But at the end of the day, Motorhead is Motorhead, and there really is no terrible albums by the band. Go check out Manticore Tapes because it's an interesting composition. I do like its raw, unbridled passion on here. I think its approach is kind of like this, we're going to do it in a very single take kind of method as a whole band. I'm not entirely sure if that's the case, but I feel that was the vibe on here, and I do appreciate that for its sound. And I think it's more in line to the production quality of Motorhead in particular around this time. So I do like this album. I just don't know if I would like it more than On Parole or the original version. I mean, at the end of the day, the compositions are more or less the same. You know, there's no major changes, there's nothing crazy that's different. It's the same album, produced a different way. So, look, overall, I'm going to say that I'm going to give this album a score of, I don't know, about 7.5 million chilies on the spicy scale. My favourite tracks would, of course, have to be Leaving Here, The Watcher, and I'm going to say Motorhead, as well as Iron Horse, Born to Lose. Yeah, that's a pretty cool track there. Now, it's certainly an interesting viewpoint. If you were going to say, alright, what album should I start on when I'm coming up to Motorhead, I would not say Manticore Tapes. But it's not a bad point to cross roads with early on either. You know, if you want to go and start with Motorhead, Overkill and Bomber are the perfect ways to jump into the game. Manticore Tapes would probably be something like your 4th or 5th album, something like that. It's an interesting one, but it's not perfection. It is certainly another album for Motorhead fans to enjoy, and I'd say that this is a fine record at the end of the day. There's nothing really flawed about it. Anyway, if you are interested by Motorhead and other materials, keep a tune for our channel because we have a special Motorhead video coming out over the next couple of weeks. Stay tuned for that one. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on this record and comment below, of course, with your opinions, and stay spicy out there. If you've enjoyed this content, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to us, and stay notified for future music related content because it keeps our manager happy at the end of the day. We are also on Discord, Instagram, Facebook, and all those other social platforms if you want to check us out. As always, people, you have a great day and stay spicy.